to get into a little bit of a deeper topic and talk about how I came to Revert. I know that whenever people see me, sometimes they wonder why I'm wearing a head covering. I don't look outwardly Muslim other than that. I feel like I've been wanting to tell this story for a really long time. I converted back in, must have been 2008. And that was a very long time ago. I was at the time 18 and now I'm 31. It's hard to kind of order because it happened so long ago and kind of over time, but I'll try to make it as fluid as I can. So starting back then, well, even further back. To start at the beginning, I never had any Muslim friends. I didn't know anything about Islam. Going back, the only memory that I remember was probably in 3rd grade. And I remember this girl would always come in. She was in an older grade, and during our quiet time, or it was like some sort of reading or something, she would come in and sit with our teacher during her lunchtime. And for some reason, we knew this was her lunchtime, and everyone was always kind of confused why she was in there during lunch. So, come to find out, I guess I went up to her one day, because I remember this very clearly, but I don't remember how the started. All the rest of my class had, I think, started to head to lunch or recess or something. And I went up to her and I said, "Why aren't you eating lunch?" And she said, "Oh, I'm fasting." And I said, "Oh, so you're not eating," something like that. And then it came out that I said, "So you can't even have water?" And I find that so funny now because I know that that's like a meme everywhere and like all of that, because I feel like, you know, it's a big thing whenever you're fasting during Ramadan and you don't have any food, water, anything from sun up to sundown. You know, it's challenging. And at the time, at my age especially, I was so confused, and I don't think I asked her about her religion or why she did it. I was just like, oh wow, like, okay. And that's literally all I remember until fast forward grade. I guess it was I met my now husband, which, yes, I know, it's crazy. But we started going out, or whatever you want to say, in 8th grade. And and he's Muslim. And so I came to know about Islam through his family. Now, I didn't convert, you know, at that young of an age or anything. I didn't really have any thoughts about religion too much at that time. My family background is Catholic, and so we didn't really grow up going to church. We went every once in a while. My mom really tried to get me into like religion classes and to be confirmed in the Catholic religion. And see, I don't even know a ton about it, but I know it's kind of like I at least think it's kind of like being recognized by the church as a Catholic. And so and I was very hesitant to go to religion classes. It was just not something that I wanted. I wasn't interested in it, and I was very resistant to it. So I did take a few classes, and this was in order to be confirmed eventually, but I never finished. So anyway, I started kind of seeing his mom, at the time, Antonio's mom and sister and dad, and doing certain religious things like praying and not eating pork and not drinking and, you know, all these different things, reading, you know, their holy book, which is obviously the Quran, but at the time I had no idea about it. But going over to his house, I saw a different side. I wasn't very well-rounded in different cultures. I had other cultures and different things around me, but I never took the time to kind of really understand them. And so, time went on, we were together, and I realized that this religion was very interesting to me. I liked the order of it. I liked that there were certain things that you were meant to do every day. It wasn't something that you just like, and a lot of religions are like this, but I never experienced religion this way. So whenever I saw them, you know, praying 5 times a day and doing certain things and not doing certain things, it was appealing to me because I liked that order and that type of, I don't want to say strictness, but just order is the best thing I could say. The order to your life, kind of like a guidebook. And I really liked that. And so every once in a while I would go to the mosque with them, or I would ask them about different things that came up, you know, and why this. And his dad was very much into telling me stories from the Quran and different things, and it was very welcomed. I really enjoyed it. And so, you know, years down the line, we were graduating high school and we knew we wanted to get married. And so they wanted us to be married. And that was our nikah. And so I had something inclined within me, because it was nothing that we talked about together, like for me to convert before we got married or anything like that. That really wasn't a conversation that we had. And so I, after all these years, had come to the conclusion that I wanted to convert. Now, I didn't know that much. I will say I didn't know that much about the religion, but something within me, something in my heart just told me that this was the right thing to do. And I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell anybody, you know, any of my family. And I was incredibly scared because, you know, back then it was even closer to like September 11th, and Islamophobia was at, you know, at a really big high. And I was nervous about being perceived as a bad person, or you know, my family rejecting me. And you know, I wasn't on YouTube, I didn't have friends who converted and all of these things like that, so I didn't have that connection to kind of see what other people went through. I had no close family or anything that chose a different religion, no friends like that. So it was very it was a humbling experience. But it was very lonely, because I had his family, of course, being supportive, but they had no idea about having, you know, non-Muslim parents or non-Muslim family members and then converting. Nobody kind of had, that was just new to me and new to everybody else. So I ended up converting. We did our nikah sometime later, and then we got legally married in 2009. And I was 19, he was 20. And so I will say after that, I didn't really practice Islam. I didn't really gain much knowledge. It was kind of at a standstill for a really long time. And to like now I regret that, because I feel like there's so much time that was lost between then and now. But I'll tell you kind of about what happened to get me closer to God and how that kind of changed things for me. So we had our son Iman. I was 20, my husband was 21, and it was in May the following year, after our legal marriage. And so we were young parents. I know people have kids younger, of course, but for me and for my family, young. So we had Iman, and then we were both in school and working. And so after we had him, I stopped working and was just doing school twice a week. And my husband was working full time and going to school. And so, you know, lots happened in between. We ended up having our daughter in 2012 in June, Inaya. And so we had her, and, you know, we struggled. We were young parents. We were going to school and working. It was tough. And being, you know, newly married at such a young age. But thank God we had such a conviction for each other. We had such respect and love for each other that even if we had tough times, that we were able to see each other through those times. Moving forward, I ended up I got accepted into nursing school to get my bachelor's degree. And that was, I believe Inaya was 1.5 years and Iman. So that was a challenge within itself. I was still working part-time, going to school full-time in an accelerated program. My mom, my grandma, his family, we lived close by at the time, so they were super helpful, you know, helping us while I studied and, you know, while my husband was at work and things like that. So anyway, very stressful times. And I developed what I had never experienced before, which was generalized anxiety. And it is something that if you told me, you know, oh, this happens to some people, it sounds absolutely like, how could you possibly think this way? I had very irrational thoughts about getting sick or something bad happening to my family members, my husband, my children, just anxious constantly, and to the point where I couldn't function. I was still in school at this time, and I would just have panic attacks. And it was all, I believe, stemming from being, overworked, working, 13-hour days sometimes with my job, and then going into nursing school and having to be on top of my game. These classes are not easy. You can't just kind of like slide by in them. You have to have certain, grade point average in order to move on and get your license, and all these things, that I can talk about at another time. But it's a very grueling process, especially to be an accelerated program. And I'm not someone who's extremely smart and intelligent and, as far as book smart and all of that, it's not something that comes easy to me. And I say that only to make the point that it was that much harder. So I ended up with anxiety. I was in my last semester of school, very close to the end, doing my clinicals, my last rotation. And I kept having to leave my clinicals because I was so anxious that my vision would get blurry. It was just crazy. All these symptoms that I had, I truly thought there must be something wrong with me. And it was just anxiety. And so, I had, in this time, I had tests done, I went to the doctor, all this stuff, and nothing was wrong. It was just all from the anxiety. And I truly believe now that I'm on the other side of it, that yes, that's anxiety, but that is what pulled me closer to God. Nothing helped me. Nothing that I did, nothing that I tried, nothing helped me, because my anxiety would always be there. I was just, it was just a time that I wish that on nobody how I felt. But now that I'm past it, I can be grateful for it, because I'm grateful for the relationship that I have with God because of it. So fast forward, I get to a point where I'm settled. I'm working now. I passed my, NCLEX boards exam, thank God. And I started little by little. The only thing that helped me through my times where I was super anxious was praying, was learning about God, learning about Islam, moving closer to God. That's what helped me. And that's whenever I knew that this was the truth for me, and this was my truth no matter what. And so, going forward, it took baby steps, but now at this time I converted at 18. Now I was about 25, and I was very adamant about learning and very adamant about becoming a better Muslim and practicing. And so I started eating, only zabiha halal meat. I started dressing more modern. I started learning and reading the Quran. I started praying my 5 daily prayers. I started incorporating these things little by little by little by little. And it's something that it just changed my entire life. Being close to God and having that faith is what gets me through any trial that I have now, any issue that I have now. And that anxiety is what brought me closer to God. And I know now that if I hadn't experienced that, I don't know where I would be with my relationship with God and my religion. And so, even though it was extremely painful and difficult, I can now be grateful for it.